This is a conversation with Mike, founder and CEO of the digital marketing agency Obility, with B2B clients like Marketo, Snowflake, and Gainsight. Mike and I lay out the spectrum of AI adoption across clients. We talk about AI use cases in the agency itself. And Mike also advises on how and why you should be using SLMs, small language models. We break down the current search landscape and trends on what's feeding the LLMs and give a step-by-step on getting AEO going for your brands. Dive in. Welcome to the AI for Marketing show. I'm your host, Angelina, with many years of experience marketing in the tech industry. This show is for marketers to keep up with the pace of AI. And I'm so excited to have with us today Mike, who is the founder and CEO of Obility. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I am so excited. Just for the viewers, Mike and I go back, I don't know how many years, right? But I do remember that when I first listened to a presentation by you, Mike, and then I met you, I immediately put you in my book of like, man, he's so smart, right? And he's doing cutting edge things. And fast forward now, which is, I think, about like 15 plus years, I still think of you in that category, right? Like you're doing cutting edge things, you're experimenting. And now more than ever, I think, is the need, right? Like for people like you, right? Who can actually embrace all this newness and chaos and, like what's going on and actually make sense of it. So I have been looking forward to having this conversation with you, Mike, and seeing what you're up to and learn from you. And for our viewers, if you can maybe tell them a little bit about yourself, about Obility, and then we can get into some meaty topics.
Really appreciate that, Angelina. And like I said, excited to be here. Obility actually celebrates its 15th anniversary tomorrow. So we'll be around for 15 years. We've been working with B2B SaaS companies pretty much since day one. Marketo really early on was our first customer, and we really grew with them and started to cut our teeth with B2B SaaS with Marketo. We manage paid search, paid social, SEO, some marketing and data operations for hundreds of B2B SaaS clients over the years. And I've really learned a lot from our clients and really tailored our processes to B2B SaaS and B2B tech.
Awesome. So 15. So that means that basically I have followed along your journey right from the inception, right?
Yeah, yes. Very close, especially if you saw me, I believe you saw me speak at a Marketo summit, right? So that would be one of the first few years.
To me, I think it was at a Google event. At least it was, It was a Marketo event at a Google campus or something like that. But that's where, the combination of Google, Marketo, and you, I was like, okay, super smart.
Yeah, the Google events were early on too, back when Google was really good about supporting agencies.
True. Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so obviously, I'm sure not a dull moment as digital marketing has gone through its ups and downs, and now it seems to be, at least the way I think about it now, is that this is a reset moment, on how we do digital marketing, right? Like the outcomes are the same, but our recipes, our ingredients, right? Like the things that we used to play with, everything's changed now. So I'm sure you're kind of like feeling the same. So one of the things that I wanted to kind of get your take on, especially since you have clients, across the spectrum, right? Like from super sophisticated marketing to those who are probably just beginning to get serious, right? Like about digital marketing. What is it that you're seeing? Like how are companies leveraging AI now for marketing?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I think it varies quite a bit. I mean, you see the large enterprise companies that seem to have endless resources approach AI and marketing quite a bit different than the scrappy startups. Not every company really can devote a year and a half, 2 years to building AI tools, pulling in people from all different areas of the company to focus on it. But the ones that do are creating great things that are really augmenting what their marketers do. And you can see kind of those rewards pay off. But honestly, most people are having their people in there testing custom GPTs, testing AI agents, kind of working individually and bringing them together to their startup. So it truly is different depending on kind of the company's circumstance. For me, I work largely with fast growing startups. So it's not a lot of the ones with tons of resources. And for them, it might not make a ton of sense to spend all of that money and time into creating an AI tool. So typically what I'm seeing is more folks trying to fix a specific process or develop a tool that addresses a very specific need, rather than spending a ton of time completely trying to overhaul their marketing department. So I think everyone's testing. I think that's absolutely a no-brainer. People should be doing that, but how you test is going to depend on your resources.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that, especially with the high growth kind of companies, right, and the startup companies where there is the limitation on resources, right, it's very much AI is being used as a tool, as an enabler, right, like for optimizing to whatever objectives they are focused on. And so they're not going out there and essentially like buying like an 80K new AI MarTech stack, right? Like you're seeing lesser of that and like more of like just like experimentation and including it in your regular workflows.
Yeah, for the most part, that's what I'm seeing from our clients. We certainly have clients that are doing that. And like I said, I really think it's cool the kind of stuff that they can do about learning their individual brand, their individual marketing content, marketing assets. But for the most part, our clients are kind of working on an individual basis or relying on some of their vendors to provide those tools.
Okay. Yeah. And then in terms of the AI approaches that you've seen or the tools that have been adopted, has there been anything that you would say has been sort of game changing across any of your experiences or your clients' experiences?
Yeah, for us, it's really the practical ones that I'm finding really useful. So the ones that are addressing a very specific problem with their individual data sets. A lot of time, this is an existing tool that we use that is adding AI capabilities. So an example of that is SpyFu. We use this all the time for competitive intelligence for our clients, competitors, to see what their competitors are spending on paid search, what keywords they're targeting. We used to have to go into SpyFu, type in the domain, click a bunch of different stuff and get the answer for how much they're spending. Now we can just throw in a list of competitors into a custom GPT and get all that spend data. We can compare keywords to see what competitors are targeting multiple keywords that are the same. We can get all of that straight from the custom GPT and copy and paste it out, which saves a lot of time. And that time just adds up. So that's been, I wouldn't necessarily say game changing, but most useful in terms of like giving back our time so we can focus more on strategy for our clients. I guess for truly game changing, I think that the SLMs, the small language models, where our clients are having an AI actually learn their data sets, has been the most game changing. We have clients that put in all of their knowledge base, they put in all of their public information from their website, all the private information from their emails and customer calls, and then they're able to query that small language model to get things like pain points that their customers talk about, or positioning they've talked about in the past, or ad assets that they've used years ago. And it really provides a way to have those learnings from the past still there at hand, as well as keep consistency for their ads and marketing efforts going forward. And it's just not something that as a human that you can do as well, or especially if people are coming in and out of an organization, that knowledge base often is lost.
So very interesting, Mike. And actually, if I can, and I'm sure that you have more examples to share, but just even on these two, the SpyFu one, right? You talked about custom GPT, which has really helped, right? Like essentially automate it, right? Like, or make it much, much faster, right? Like to look at the competitive landscape. Now, has custom GPT replaced SpyFu, or have you integrated SpyFu in your custom GPT workflow?
Yeah, good question. So in this case, SpyFu has a completely separate custom GPT that they created that when I log into ChatGPT, it's just in the left-hand side. I can click on it. I don't have to go to spyfu.com. I don't have to use their tool at all. I can just query their custom GPT that they created. So it's built into my workflow when I use ChatGPT. So it's super easy.
I see.
Also, like exporting out of it so much easier than sending it to Excel and having to move from there because it's already in the custom GPT.
Okay.
So it's built into ChatGPT itself, and it's right there anytime I log in.
Got it. Okay. So that actually probably goes back to that first, point that you were also making, which is a lot of the existing vendors in your own tech stack, right? Like are doing a bunch of AI enhancements, and that's what you're seeing yourself as well as your clients kind of like leverage, right? Like for AI. And I wholeheartedly agree with that because I'm also seeing the same thing, right? Like if we've used SEMrush, then SEMrush has added on like the AI toolkit, right? Even a simple thing like Dash This, which is used for dashboarding, has something called as insights, right? Like AI insights added onto it. So I think all of the existing tech stack is definitely adding on, right? Like the AI capabilities. Sorry,
For
go ahead.
sure. And
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like you have to have AI capabilities at this point, just table stakes. I mean, to get any type of funding. I mean, you see almost every new tool out there puts like AI in their header in search results. I mean, everyone wants to be an AI company
Yeah.
at this point, so they're all integrating AI into their models. And for the tools they use regularly, it can be super useful.
One of the other things that caught my attention was how you were describing this thing about small language models, and how it can ingest essentially all of the data, pretty much your first party data, right? And
Yep.
make help you make sense of it. So the question I have is, then are you suggesting your clients to actually have most of the companies, right? I mean, have their chat GPTs or co-pilots or something like that, which is within their firewalls, right? So essentially, I'm just kind of thinking about like how do clients use this capability, and how does it get hooked up to activation on the channels that you and Obility are an expert in, right? So if we can take an example and kind of think through that, if there's a client, they have their own custom LLM or an SLM, your advice to them is hook it up to all your internal data sources, get all that intelligence and context building, and then what? Like how do you actually activate it, right? Like on these digital channels. Have you had some success doing that?
Yeah, great question. I think the first thing is to make sure that your data isn't being used as a training model for the tools themselves. So
Right.
having that private SLM, whether you're working with Copilot or some of the other ones, just making sure it's truly private is hugely important. At Obility, we really make sure not to share any of our clients' private data with the models because we don't want the models to all of a sudden know a bunch of stuff about our clients. But the downside of that is that for a lot of our clients is they have closed those tools to their vendors too. So a lot of time we don't get to play with these SLMs at Obility. We just kind of get the opportunity to tell our clients what we want in terms of ads, in terms of creative, in terms of brand. They're able to then query it. A lot of times this comes up with like SEO blog posts where we're looking to create content targeting a specific keyword or to appear in AI overviews. Our clients can then query their database to see all of the topics that have been discussed about that specific keyword or topic in the past and be able to share that we can put into a blog post. Sadly, we're not the ones actually going in and playing with these tools because Obility doesn't own it, but we're able to see the results that our clients have when they turn over, hey, here's everything we've ever discussed on this particular topic. Can you put that into a strong blog post or a LinkedIn thought leadership ad? So we're kind of seeing the results, but not having that hands on the tools ourselves.
Which I completely understand, right? That these are walled off. But are you seeing maybe any value in Obility and other agencies like yourselves, right? Like providing some sort of, how in the earlier days agencies would provide outlines, right? Like they would actually provide either a brief or an outline, right, of like what all should be covered, and essentially reversing it now. And it used to be that a brand would provide a brief to an agency, right, and say that this is what we want to hit, and these are the objectives, etc. And then the agency would essentially like work their magic. Um, I'm thinking about like reversing that a little bit because one thing for sure is, we've all talked about is that these LLMs and SLMs are only as good as the prompts, right, that are going in. And it all depends on like, do you know how to make use of it, right, and asking the right questions. So, have you given any thought to or had any experiments or success with you provide the outline, you provide like what questions to ask, or even a step further, you provide the, I guess, the idea to the clients to hook up certain data sets, right, in their SLMs, then what questions to ask, and then the responses that are coming back are then used to guide the activation strategy, right, like for the channels that Obility is essentially leading. Like, have you tried that approach?
Yeah, we not exactly that, but something similar is like in order to create content, we used to have to sit down and interview folks, spend like an hour of their time trying to get a CEO to work with a marketing agency and do an interview. It's always been a challenge. It's a lot easier to interview an AI model, so providing those questions to a client, and then they can feed that into the AI model and then give that to us to then create a blog post is happens almost instantly. Not a lot of scheduling required, not a lot of really high cost time being used.
Yeah.
So it does increase efficiency when we're trying to create all of this content. So in that sense, it's valuable. I think that for the clients that we worked with, they've had the integration set up already. It hasn't necessarily been us recommending it. But we can share kind of the results with other clients that we're seeing with those that have it built.
Yeah. No, I mean, absolutely. Because in my mind, when you were describing it, I was just thinking that it seems to be a cliff, right? Like, or a chasm over here between like where it's going to get activated and where the intelligence is sitting. And how do you actually bridge that, right? Like, to enable agencies. Um, so in terms of, I've been very curious about how has AI actually helped in efficiencies, right? Like on the agency side, because as an operator, I guess like the parameters that we operate in and run in are different, and your world is different, right? Like from an agency perspective. So, how has AI changed, right? Like the way that your team operates now, if you think back to maybe even a year ago, right, or 6 months ago.
Yeah, I mean, I spent an afternoon with a bunch of CMOs at a Bay Area conference, and I think the kind of universal feeling was we're gaining a lot of efficiency, but at a really inefficient rate. So we're doing all this testing, all this building, but a lot of the times we're failing, and VCs and folks are putting all this pressure to use AI constantly, which results in a lot of our work being done building AI. But it's at first completely inefficient to finally get to that efficient stuff. So I think net, like if you looked over the last 18 months, 2 years of working with AI, it's probably pretty inefficient. But we're now just starting to learn enough to start to get to that efficiency spot. And I think I'm seeing that more and more with the people I talk to is that it's been super inefficient so far, but the net effect, the cumulative effects are just now starting to really show efficiency.
So, okay, in terms, that's very interesting. In terms of inefficiency, is it because there are pockets of adoption of different tools that are happening? So, firstly, I feel like maybe there is a little bit of shadow AI going on, which is, your employees might be using it and you don't know about it, right? So, that's not even part of the calculation there. And then another could be that there are pockets, like different functions in marketing might be using it. And again, it's not consistent, right? It cannot be measured. So when you say like they're seeing inefficiencies, is it just because they're like facing dead ends, right? Like, okay, we tried it on, we went through all of this legal IT clearance, etc., got this great tool, and now it's just sitting there, right? Like the adoption's not there. Like, so tell me a little bit more about, because I'm curious to hear, right, like what other companies are essentially experiencing. I'll go back to my question about the usage of AI and how it's changed your own operation as an agency, right? Because I think like that's a very important and a perspective, right, that you would have valuable insights to share.
Yeah, I think for the first part, I think it's not really understanding the AI's capabilities, especially as it continues to shift over time. So a year ago, you could try and completely fail because the AI couldn't handle it. And then 6 months later, with a new release, all of a sudden it can handle it. So you try, fail, come back to it later, try again, and it works. And you can kind of push from there. But you only get a certain amount each time you try. And you usually hit some sort of dead end. So you have to consistently try again. So internally, from an efficiency standpoint, I think where we've been most efficient is in quality assurance. So we run hundreds of campaigns across dozens of clients. We're bound to make some mistakes. And so in the past, it's always been manually finding those issues, whether it's how we structure an account or how we set up an ad where it may not exactly fit the way Obility has its guidelines set up. But it's a lot easier to have AI review our account structure or review our ads across all of our different clients and just flag anything that isn't meeting our guidelines.
That's a great use case. Yeah.
Yeah, similarly is like performance. So I remember all these dashboards we used to have to create where we would spend hours updating dashboards to look at click-through rate across all of our clients and look at conversion rate and all this different data and try to determine like, hey, what's our baseline? What ads aren't meeting that baseline? What campaigns aren't meeting that baseline for conversion? And then having to go individually into each account and kind of address it. Now we can have AI flag those outliers, and it can be a good outlier or a bad outlier. If it's bad, we need to go address it with the team and figure out what's going on there. Or if it's good, we need to see why it's good and kind of double down on those efforts. So I think QA, quality control, quality assurance is really helping us at Obility see that stuff more quickly, flag it more quickly, and address it more quickly.
Have you also seen any advantages in, how many accounts your account managers, for example, can scale? Because again, I'm thinking about it from an agency's perspective, right? Like, has it actually either enabled them to take on more accounts or it's shifted, right? Like the ratio of like the kind of work that they used to do, right? A lot of administrative following up, communications, collaboration, like all that stuff versus doing some more strategic, I guess like brainstorming and thinking. Like, have you seen any of that reflect yet, or is that the vision?
Yeah, no, I've seen other agencies that kind of take that approach where they're trying to become more efficient and be able to serve more clients and have some more self-serve options where clients can query a database or an AI rather than having to ask their account manager. That's not the approach that we've taken. I think that our goal is not more clients necessarily, but just to get deeper with our existing clients. If we have tools that can help take some of the repetitive process off the plate, hopefully it allows us to put more time with strategy, more times in planning, and look further down the customer journey. So if initially we're running paid search campaigns and we're spending a ton of time just getting the right keywords in place and looking at search term reports, that's prohibiting us from jumping into looking at landing pages and doing landing page testing and looking at assets and trying to figure out if it's the strongest assets, or even customer journey mapping, where we're seeing how those the paid search channel behaves over time as people come back to the site. As we start to have AI kind of address those repetitive tasks, we can spend more time on the other stuff and get a lot deeper more quickly. And rather than having it be a 6-year engagement before we really get to everything, we can do it in the first couple of years, hopefully.
Yeah. So I think for marketers, right, who are sort of like wanting to adopt AI, and I think like the pressures of just like the day-to-day job, right, like is that you don't have time to look up, and you have a lot of like FOMO of like what else is going on in the outside world, right? Like, would you have any advice at all on like, how to approach this, how to start thinking about integrating AI? Any tips from you?
For sure. I mean, one, I'd say ignore what all the LinkedIn thought leaders are saying about their AI use cases, because I think half of them are kind of made up. But I mean, I think the first thing is really just getting into it. I kind of view AI as, I mean, I actually heard this on a podcast, but kind of the service industrial revolution. Like before, we kind of updated processes, now we're updating services and how we think about those tasks. And what I would say is like, think about the tasks that individuals are doing on an individual basis, and really break it down into the smallest parts possible, and then start to take that one small part and replace that with an LLM or a custom GPT or whatnot. And that's kind of the approach that we've had. Is we started with large ambitions, and as soon as we tried to do it, we recognized, hey, we can't do all of this in one gulp. We need to really break this down into the smallest process possible, have AI help us with that, and then add the next step, have it help us with that, and then add the next step.
I like that advice. That makes it a little bit more manageable. So, if you want to take a concrete example of that, say there is somebody who is a, I don't know, like a paid social uh, manager, right, in a company, and they don't have enough bandwidth, right, like to actually go in and like do the execution on all of the different paid social channels now, because they keep on increasing, right? Like we want them to be essentially manning and on top of, right, like Meta, LinkedIn, um, you know, Insta, then also be on Reddit now, and all of these different channels, like the YouTube also, right? So if you take that example of this paid social manager, right, to take to just kind of like think through how you said, break it down into different steps, right? So then the steps that you're thinking about, or this individual should think about, should it be, there's budget planning, there is strategy, there is an actual execution, there is a creative, aspect of it, there is a copywriting aspect of it, right? Like to assemble the whole thing together. Are these the tasks that you're thinking about? And, essentially try to like outsource, or try to like bring in AI capabilities into any one of these functions one at a time. Is that essentially what you're suggesting?
Yeah, I would categorize all those as kind of larger tasks that need subtasks. So say paid social, like paid social, kind of at the core foundation of paid social is really understanding the audience that you're targeting. But if we just ask an LLM to help us define an audience that's relevant to a website, more than likely we're going to get really broad junk. So what we can do is take a very specific thing, say job titles. We can pull out of LinkedIn a list of 400 job titles that were served by those LinkedIn ads, and we can have an LLM run some analysis on it to figure out which is the most engaging, which job titles are engaging with your ads and content the most, and then segment that by, say, decision maker versus practitioner, or allow us to see like VP performance versus analyst performance, because people have dozens of different ways that they have a job title.
Yeah.
And what LLMs are good at is like associating job titles together quickly rather than having to sort through all of that data. So an LLM in step one could just tell us the difference between decision makers versus practitioners in terms of engaging content. Kind of the next step would be to go through and categorize, say, job titles to relevance of the client itself. So is this job title super relevant? And then if not, the third step would be like, let's pull the ones that aren't relevant out and push the ones that are not only relevant but engaging with content into a separate bucket so that we can target them kind of as a core group of job titles. So even just like looking at audience targeting is really 6, 7, 8 steps that you have to each one have LLMs solve that before going on to the next one.
Yeah, I think I'm glad that you actually talked about this distinction, because I was definitely still floating at a higher level, right? Like of the job to do, and not necessarily like zooming in into the different tasks. So this is very interesting. What you're saying essentially is that even going down to the micro level, right? Like it can start like helping you out, and there will be efficiency gains from that, and not just efficiency gains, but also, again, if it has access to your first party data, then you can essentially, leverage its capability to combine, right, like so much more, right, like factor so much more into the decisioning, right, of the final set of titles that you actually go out with. So that was a great example. Yeah.
Good way of tying that together. And then, yeah, ads, like if you look at the ads, it's a similar thing. Like we're going to have ideally a bunch of niche audiences that you're targeting in paid social. You're going to want specific ads for each of those niche audiences. It's really time consuming to go through and create 20 ads for each of those audiences, whereas an LLM can do that much more quickly. But again, there's those steps where you're correlating what it means to create content for a job title that isn't inherent at this point in most LLMs. Like there's that training step.
Yeah. This is really, really good, I think, to call out the distinction, and it also gives a very, I guess, like an actionable thing, right? Like for people to actually listen to this and go out and like think about what they can do. So I'm actually going to now ask you something which, I think like, has rocked a lot of our digital marketers' worlds, and that has been, search, right, and ChatGPT, right? And ChatGPT, and if I think about like the evolution, right, of this thing, like, okay, first it came around and everybody thought that Google's going to be dead now, right? But we are seeing that these are kind of like still coexisting, not yet taken over completely, right? But then, just as we were settling into that, we're also hearing about ChatGPT and the paid ads, right? That it's supporting. So I guess my question to you is, if you want to like throw some light on how you're thinking about the changes that are happening, what should brands keep in mind, and what should we actually objectively even accept, right?
Yep.
As a changed reality, and as like something that is not going to go back, and that we have to do certain new things, not done in a way that we were used to for the last 20 years. So I guess it's a long-winded way of asking impact of ChatGPT, and I'm saying ChatGPT, but it's LLMs. I mean Perplexity, Claude, and all of that, right? Like on SEO, and then also now, right? Like on paid, right? And shifting our mindset there. So would love to know your take on it and advice.
Yeah, from the paid front, I'm incredibly excited for these LLMs to start running ads. I mean, Google is effectively a monopoly. You just don't see very much for Microsoft ads in terms of search. So to have these other players come in with some good market share and actually challenge Google for folks searching for stuff, I think is incredibly valuable for all of us to have that competition, have a different spot to advertise and actually build an audience. So incredibly excited there. If I was advising a client, I would start asking for that budget sooner than later. I don't think that CFOs are necessarily thinking about it. And I would really be looking for like a test budget for testing LLM advertising. On the SEO front, I mean, I think LLMs have changed SEO forever. And the way I think about it is I truly think that SEO and GEO, generative engine optimization or AI optimization, are kind of two separate skills. I don't think that if you're necessarily good at SEO historically, that you're good at GEO. So I think that companies need to start thinking about these things as separate entities, similar to paid search and paid social. Like they are two different skill sets that require full level of attention. So as we start to measure GEO performance, it's completely separate from SEO performance in my view.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. I mean, even some of the metrics that we're looking at, right? Like citations and mentions, this was not something that we were, this was not the vocabulary, right, that we were using for SEO, right? But at the same time, I do feel that they're kind of like trying to carve out a share from this similar kind of objective, which is how can we be found, right? Like where people are searching, right? So as far as like mind share voice, right? Like the traffic that's coming in, that, there is definitely common ground there, but the surface area, right, that we are playing on is completely different, right? Like with ChatGPT, with, GEO. And again, would love to get your take on this also, as far as like, is there any merit to all this that we hear about, that you should make sure that your brand is actually showing up in Reddit, in Wikipedia, in third-party review sites, even in social media, because that is where these LLMs are actually going in and pulling, information about you. Is that something that you're also seeing, as a successful strategy, or is that again something like the LinkedIn post, which is like just ignore, right?
No, I mean, I think it's always been valuable to have your brand in other search engines. I mean, YouTube has always been the second biggest search engine to Google. I mean, if on the B2C side, obviously Amazon's a huge search engine. So I think it's always been useful to have your brand show up in Reddit search engines and things like that. But it's become doubly so with LLMs and the way that they're learning. I mean, recently Reddit was the most cited source. So having your brand listed in Reddit and being answer to specific questions on Reddit was hugely important. Now YouTube is becoming more of a source for LLMs. So having those YouTube videos is becoming more and more important. And again, this is shifting, but the whole time it's clear that it's not just your website anymore that is going to be answering people's questions. Your website is just a piece of it. And LLMs are kind of disregarding your website when they're trying to answer questions in a broader sense. They're looking at all these different resources. They're able to pull in all that information, all of the search results, and provide an answer based off that, not just like a single position on the SERPs. Instead, you're a mix of all these different search results. So if you can show up in 5, 6, 7 of those search results, and when the LLM is summarizing it, you're going to be in a lot better position than if you just have one search result, even if that's the top one, which would be valuable in SEO.
Yeah, so basically cover your bases, right? Because the algorithms are changing and nobody really knows. But that's an interesting thought that just popped up in my head, which is, as you mentioned, that YouTube has been a very strong search engine, and it has. But we used to always think of YouTube as a search engine within itself, right? Like people are going and searching on YouTube and then, finding related content. But then there was also this thought about that, if you do SEO right for YouTube content, then it can also start showing up in Google search, right? Like, which is outside of the YouTube environment, right? So again, they being linked, it makes total sense. It makes perfect sense that it would be, leveraging, right? Like the search results and pulling results from YouTube on that. Now taking it one step further, and again, I'm asking this because I'm curious, and this is your world, right? Like search is your world. Um, should we also think about YouTube search optimization actually really helping brands show up in Gemini results, given that, you know, up until like maybe 2 months ago, Gemini was good, but now it's great, right? So people have started like, shifting around in terms of like what LLMs they're using. And I know we keep saying ChatGPT, but it's LLM the category.
For
But
sure.
Gemini by itself is becoming an important category. So to summarize my question, should we be thinking even more seriously about our traditional SEO uh, initiatives because that feeds Google search, also about YouTube search because all of this is going to feed Gemini search. Like, is that too far fetched, or is that something that you're also thinking about? And what would your advice be in this case?
No, I think that's spot on that we need to be thinking about YouTube outside of just YouTube search. Like YouTube search used to be the title of the video primarily, but now LLMs can watch the video, they can read the transcript. So it's not just the title of the video that you're optimizing for. LLMs are trained on that video. So when they're citing something and answering a question, it's the content of the video, it's the transcript in the video that they're citing as well, and they're learning from that video. So if you're addressing a use case, an LLM is learning how to solve that use case by watching your video. And if you're solving that use case using your tool, LLM's going to learn that too. So I think it's really important to optimize YouTube videos for YouTube search, but also optimize the content of the videos for Gemini, for Claude, for ChatGPT, etc.
Yeah, no, that was actually, I loved how you broke it down, right? Because we do think about it only as hashtags and title, right? Like usually, and we're not thinking about like making that content accessible, right? Like to LLMs. So speaking about that, I think that could probably be like one last question from me, and then I would definitely open it up to you to share anything that you've been observing and you want to share, right? Like with the audience that typically tends to be like marketers who are very interested in AI, right, and who want to learn more about like AI and the upcoming solutions around it. So the question that I had, and these are just kind of coming up as we're talking, right?
Yep.
Since you kind of talked about like the transcript and the transcript being accessible to the LLM crawlers. Um, if nothing, right, like for those who are listening, and if they've done nothing yet, right, like for AEO and they're doing business as usual, I'm assuming that they at least have a website, right, and they have content on their website. So to open it up to LLM crawlers so that that content starts getting leveraged and starts showing up. Do you have any like one, two, three kind of steps that you would advise people to go back and do this today, and not wait for it because you're blocking essentially the crawling from happening? So any advice or any expertise that you would want to like leave folks with?
Yeah, I think first step is probably the low hanging fruit, which is usually listicles. Like if someone's looking for a list of your solution, like say HR software, you want to be in listed on those LLMs. So creating listicles on your site, creating it on other sites, and being included on other sites. So getting those citations is hugely important, and I would say like kind of like the first step. The next step is really addressing your ICP. So again, with an HR software example, if you're HR software for fintech, make sure that you are creating content that directly addresses the audience that you're for, so that if someone's searching for their specific need, their niche little custom prompt, that you're showing up for those industries that you're most relevant for. And then the next step is I would really get involved with Reddit, just because Reddit's cited often, and then YouTube is also cited often. So with Reddit, you can use tools to see what Reddit posts are showing up for relevant queries. And those will often be in AI overviews, or they'll be in custom GP or chat GPT answers. So then you can go directly to those posts, find a way to get involved with those posts. Often that can be challenging, just because Reddit doesn't want advertisers or shills necessarily. They want actual conversation. And then also create YouTube content around that. So if you see YouTube getting cited, I think most recently it was like 25% of citations were YouTube. Again, it's recognizing, hey, what YouTube videos are getting cited. Let's create YouTube videos that address that have that transcript, that's training. But also consider things like partnerships, like sponsor YouTube videos that are already ranking well, or work with content creators that are showing up for those results. So yeah, listicles, ICP, industries, and then YouTube and Reddit would kind of be the areas that I would start.
Awesome. Yeah. And what about like on your website itself, right? Like you've got all this content on the website. I mean, and I know like I've heard about it, and we've been trying things too, right? Like the LLMs.txt, robots.txt. And some podcasts get even more technical, and they talk about like, don't do JavaScripting on the client side, do it on the server side. Anything that you want to like dispel around that, or it's an absolutely must if you want your website content to be crawled.
Yeah, we recommend schema. So just to make it clear to LLMs as much as possible what different objects are. And then we recommend the usual stuff, like have the answer as close as possible to the top and like directly address it. Have FAQ sections, segment your blog posts so that they're easily digestible. All of that stuff that we've seen work with LLMs. I mean, the caveat is that it's still early, and a lot of this is changing quite rapidly. But the nice thing is that, at least for the most part with LLMs, you can see results pretty quickly if you make changes. It's not like the SEO days where it takes a little bit longer. So you can see what's working much more quickly now than in the past.
Yeah, which is also very interesting, right? Because we're also very used to explaining to leadership that with SEO, efforts will take about 3 months, right? Like for results to start showing. And so what I'm hearing is that timeline has sort of compressed with AEO. Is that what you're seeing across your clients?
Yeah. So that's used to be exactly what we said, like 3 months for SEO. But yeah, I think in a couple of weeks, you can see the LLMs, especially that are doing the searches in real time and updating their information in real time. You can see the changes happen in what they serve back. I think the challenge is also that the answer is always going to be different. And so even if you get in there one time, that doesn't guarantee you that they're going to be in there for the next prompt, and every prompt is pretty custom.
That is true. That is absolutely true. We've shared that experience, right? Like with a bunch of us, some people getting excited about seeing some results, and then somebody else trying it out and not really seeing it. Also, I've seen some people get results when they put the phrase within quotation marks, and then they see it. And, if we put it in without quotation marks, we don't see it. And I'm like baffled. Firstly, why would somebody search with quotation marks? And secondly, how does it change, right? Like the behavior. But I guess that would take us going deep into the weeds, right? Like of SEO. So I'll get us back up a little bit. And again, like just looking at your vantage point, Mike, that way you're working with like marketing leaders across different companies, and every one of them, I'm pretty sure, has a mandate that we need to be doing more with AI, right? So I'm just curious to know from you, like across the board, when you're talking to marketing leaders, what is the AI savviness level, right? Like of these leaders that you're talking to? Like, do marketers in general get it and embrace it? Or are marketers thinking of this as some technology thing that is a black box that they don't want to definitely like open up, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, so I'm just very curious to know, like, what is the AI savviness of the marketers, right, that you're dealing with day in and day out? Like, what would you say?
Yeah, I think for the most part, like the community of marketers that we work with, like a lot of them are VC backed, high growth. A lot of them are in the Bay Area, just are naturally at kind of the cutting edge. And they've also had mandates from their CEO and their C suite that they need to be testing AI every day for the last year plus, where they have KPIs around AI. Like it's just so heavily involved in all of their day-to-day activities that at this point, 2026, they've been using AI for at least a year and have some experience with it. And so our clients know a lot about AI, but they're also getting pushed on appearing in AI overviews, appearing in LLM searches that the investors or CEO are doing where they're not showing up. So there's a sophistication in that they have absolutely played with AI tools. They've absolutely done things with AI, but there's also this lack of sophistication in understanding how to appear in the LLMs, but also in how to like what's the maximum capabilities that they can get out of these tools. Like I don't think that anyone that's a marketer truly believes that they could replace a hire right now with an AI agent, like some of the C-suite might want them to believe. So I think that there's still limitations on understanding that the capabilities of AI. But I think at this point, everyone has messed around with AI quite a bit, has found some use cases for it, most likely on their individual job level and not necessarily at a company level. But I don't think anyone's that we work with it as a marketer is afraid of AI or treats it as a black box or scared of getting involved. I think they've had to been involved in it for the last year plus.
Yeah. That's very heartening to hear, actually. That's great, right? Because I think traditionally marketers have sort of like built this divide, right? Like with technology and MarTech and marketing operations has been essentially the function that provides that bridge, right? Like with technology. And I absolutely like marketers now have to, right? Like understand it, embrace it, use it, right? And consider it as an important, right? Like essentially player, right? Like in their success. So that's great. So Mike, anything that you would like to essentially just have your parting thoughts on anything, honestly?
Yeah, I mean, the last thing that I'd pass on is like we have a core tenet at Obility not to trust ad platforms. Like we believe that Google and LinkedIn like are about making money first and foremost. So their recommendations are often about how LinkedIn or Google could make more money. So I think that holds true when you think about the AI automations that are in those platforms. So a lot of people will set up automation in Google or they'll set up predictive audiences LinkedIn. Sometimes it works, oftentimes it doesn't. But the main thing to remember is Google and LinkedIn's priority is to make money. I think that's true of ChatGPT and Claude and all those too. Eventually, they want to make money, so that they're going to focus on that first and foremost versus necessarily helping marketers. So there still has to be this human element to go in and validate what AI is doing and be part of that workflow is that human review. At least currently, I see that in the future too, but I I think that big tech is about making money and shareholder value and not necessarily about the success of its customers.
Okay, that's a great point. So basically, don't jump into self-drive mode, right?
Yeah.
Like the full service, so full self-drive mode, right? Like the FSD.
Yep.
But know how to work the bells and whistles and see, where you want to take it to, what's your destination, and yeah, and being aware, right, of like everything that's happening around you. I think that's very good advice and absolutely makes sense. I mean, there is definitely, I guess, like a temptation, right, to just check a box where it says auto and then kind of like leave it. And we started doing that, like maybe at a bidding level, right? And then later on, it crept up into targeting and personalized copy, etc., right? So I think that's great advice. Um, so, Mike, I know I could go on and like talk to you and start diving into like depths, right? Like into each of the channels, because we share a lot of that world. But honestly, thank you so much for coming on today and for taking out your time and just kind of like sharing your thoughts. It's so important to hear from people and experts like yourselves who are actually entrenched in that world and can give us some actionable advice. So I really, really do appreciate your taking time out and sharing with us, all that you did today.
I enjoyed chatting, Angelina, and I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Thanks.